Hey viewers, this is Random Stuff with AlexHughes, and today I want to talk about why I choose to live a drug-free life, and this includes alcohol and tobacco. So now that I'm 21 years old in California, I have the ability to drink alcohol, smoke tobacco, and use marijuana now that it was legalized back in 2016. And I mean, I do have those options, but why don't I decide to use those drugs, anyways? And the reason why I think was my teachings back in elementary school, um, and even a little bit of middle school about how to say no to drugs. And we were taught about Red Ribbon Week, not dare. I don't think I even knew about that until I was, like 18 or so. That was before I was in school, and we were taught Red Ribbon Week, a week dedicated to learning about the significance, the history, and why to say no to drugs, or just kind of like teachings. And Red Ribbon Week, I think, had quite an impact on me. I remember, we used to wear those ribbons, and we had the declarations and the material, and it was pretty fun actually. We did some artwork, and I think associating those teachings with fun and creativity really helped, at least for me, establish that sense of a drug-free life. And as you get older, once you get into middle school, that's when a lot of those topics are brought up among peers, and you can see how some of the people you go to class with use drugs. Personally, I would say I've noticed a lot more with marijuana. Not really with alcohol or cigarettes too much. With cigarettes, sometimes I saw a couple butts on campus when I was like in high school, but it was mostly with marijuana. What I noticed in the bathrooms, you go in the bathrooms and it smells like it. I think even in middle school, you could see that influence start to come in little by little. And by the time I was in high school, I noticed a handful of examples. I don't think it was, at least I wasn't hanging around, the folks that did decide to use drugs, but I did notice a little bit of influence when it came to. I remember seeing like one sticker. I remember seeing, kids in the bathroom. They had marijuana. I've smelled it before. Smelled it on people before, and or what I thought was marijuana. But there was that temptation there. There was a little bit. Um, I wouldn't say there was initiation. Like they try to pass me like, here's a, smoke this. Or or like, smoke this cigarette, or like, here's some alcohol. I didn't go to those high school parties, where they were passing around, a red Solo cup or something like that, or passing around some alcohol. I really I didn't have a drink of alcohol, but I did have food that had alcohol, in it. Um, I remember limoncello cake. I remember, a couple things that I ate had like, wine or something in it that had been reduced. I never smoked tobacco. I've never had cigarettes before. Um, Yeah, with cigarettes, no, I'd never had cigarettes before. I've probably inhaled a lot of secondhand smoke by accident because, there's people around in public that use. But, it's not like we had teachers in the classroom, smoking tobacco. I mean, smoking cigarettes or anything like that. That's crazy to think about. Um, there was, yeah, so for me, I think throughout high school, I hung out with, I guess, drug-free crowd. I was more of a individual, or I guess some people would say a loner. I kind of did my own thing. I went to clubs when I was in high school. A lot of times I just kind of throughout middle school and high school I you know uh, did video games. There was access to computers. It's crazy. I didn't really have internet. I didn't have internet until I was like 14 or 15 years old. So the fact that I was able to use internet at school was mind blowing, to be honest. I mean, whenever my sister came home with her laptop, I was on YouTube, when I was like 10 or 11 years old, and whenever I had the chance to use the internet, I was super excited, whether that be on a phone. Once I got into about like ninth or 10th grade, I was able to go. I got a library card, and I was on the internet. I was super excited because at that time, I had a little bit experience with the internet, but I thought it was super cool, And still to this day, I think the internet is a great resource, and I'm so glad that I have YouTube and even Facebook now. Years later, to be able to socialize and talk with people. Um, yeah, so back to the fact that like throughout high school, there wasn't really a lot of drugs, initiation on me, like saying, "Hey, do you want to use this?" You know, there was one time I think I was like ninth grade, and then there's like this guy outside who's trying to push dope, and I just walked right past him. That's what I was taught. As a kid, you're taught this in elementary school, and it really sticks with you. Say no to drugs, and certain situations arise, and you're prepared for that. So there was that. There was, of course, that nagging curiosity, like, oh, the marijuana, and but for me, I stayed away. I focused on schoolwork. Plus, I had anxiety. So, and I also had the PMO cycle. So that, I guess, I wouldn't consider that a drug necessarily, but it was my addiction of choice. Instead of drugs, I was focused on videos and movies and certain music videos as well. That's what I was drawn to, and that was my source of dopamine, I would say. And so the thing was, as I got older and I became an adult and started to go on the bus, that's when there was a lot of those situations that arose where people would ask me, whether I, smoke. And now that's a very vague question because smoke cigarettes, but what they mean is marijuana. And so whenever that situation arises, I would say, no, I don't smoke marijuana. I've never smoked it before. And I guess there was a surprise there. Like, what? You know, uh, it's the people are different. Once when you're in high school, you're surrounded by the same people, same 2,500 people at my high school, and so you get used to seeing the same faces, and you're in class with the same people, but there's a whole world out there. It's like once the diploma is handed to you, you're really in a different world filled with all sorts of people from all walks of life, and it's a little surprising, and you get used to that. And I think the thing is, you have to remain an individual because it can be tempting. There's a lot of temptation out there. Sure, we know that from NoFap, right? That there is the temptation, advertising and the way women dress, that tries to draw you in, and you have to, as an adult, be responsible and realize that yeah, there's that temptation there, but what am I going to do? How am I going to react to that? Am I going to, chase after them? Am I going to give into temptation in a lot of different ways? So I think finding NoFap strengthened my belief in staying away from drugs, alcohol, and tobacco because I realized that, with this addiction to PMO, it really takes over your entire life. It's like your entire world revolves around uh, the video, the screen, the TV. It becomes just envelops your entire life. And so you can't really do anything else. You can't really accomplish your goals. I mean, maybe a little bit, but it always goes back to that addiction. You're trying to feed the dopamine. Um, so when I see alcohol advertising in magazines, the free advertising, the free publications, and I see just the normalization, the breweries and the liquor shops around the corner. I grew up seeing that, and so for me, it's normal, and I don't, I don't have any problem joking around about alcohol or seeing the T-shirts or the whatever, because I grew up seeing that. It was part of normal culture for me. However, that being said, I developed a kind of a wall to that. When I was a kid, I was curious about it. I, I didn't grow up around a whole bunch of drinkers, chugging bottles and taking shots or something. I grew up very, I guess you could say, conservative around drinking or whatnot. I mean, we had some bottles of wine that were like 30 years old or something, 20, 30 years. Sake, because Japanese family. But I was curious as a kid. I think as a lot of, as kids, we're just always questioning things. We're wondering about the world out there. But as you grow older and you have those experiences, uh, I never saw like a drunk person in the house or the fit of rage with alcohol. But what I did see was with myself, and I saw how addicted I became to, um, the PMO and fapping, and I realized that this, I don't want to be addicted to something else, or I just don't see any use to drink alcohol and have that affect my ability to think and the ability to function um, in society. I don't need that. I just don't feel a need to drink. And so what I'd rather drink is juice, because juice is good for you, mate. Orange juice, no sugar added though. And so that's why I stayed away from alcohol. I never, like I said, I never had a sip. I'm 21 years old now, so technically I'm legally allowed to drink. I've never had a sip of alcohol. Underage drinking. I never did underage drinking. Never went to those crazy teenage parties where there is underage drinking. I had food with alcohol, but at the end of the day, that alcohol evaporates when it cooks. So I stayed alcohol free. No cigarettes either, because that was um, taught to us that cigarettes, there's a lot of diseases associated with that, and so that's why I stayed away from cigarettes. That's because as a kid I was told that it causes all these different diseases, or has the ability to cause these diseases. And I was think growing up around a time when less and less people were using cigarettes, and there was that tobacco was, big tobacco was being fought against. And so I never smoked any cigarettes. Nobody in my family smoked cigarettes. Around me, no, nobody smoked cigarettes as far as I'm concerned. Cigars, or, the cigarillos, the little, the, I didn't even know about those. I saw cigars, like in Tom and Jerry, people smoking pipes, the wooden pipes. I honestly thought that looked cool, as a kid. I grew up, with those cartoons, Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry, and that's when they had like everybody, or a lot of people, even the cartoon characters were smoking, cigarettes. And I grew up with candy cigarettes. Those old retro candy stores. There was one in San Marcos, I remember, and I thought it was pretty fun, to be honest. You take like one of those candy cigarettes and it puffs out sugar. That was cool, honestly. But and then I remember with Slim Jims, it's crazy. Maybe that's how they market to kids or something. With the Slim Jims, they look like cigarettes, to be honest. And so I thought it was fun. I was like, puffing the Slim Jim and the old what from the 1920s. The long sticks with the cigarette at the end or something. I didn't say I thought it was kind of fun. But the reality is it didn't translate to me going out and buying cigarettes because I realized the health effects are detrimental. It's one thing to, play around with a Slim Jim or, candy cigarettes. It's another thing to actually smoke. And so I kind of drew the distinction. And quite frankly, I didn't really have any friends that smoked cigarettes in high school. No. So by the time I got, I was used to seeing people in public, adults, smoking cigarettes. I didn't enjoy breathing in, secondhand smoke, and because I knew there was effects there, and so honestly, I was like, it didn't interest me. I turned. Actually, a funny thing is they changed the smoking age here in California. Um, I think by the time, yeah, it was crazy. By the time I turned 18, they raised it to 21 because I know I was 18 before, so I wasn't interested in smoking cigarettes. Now there's vaping. Honestly, I I didn't grow up with vaping. I mean, I wasn't taught anything about that because that came on the scene uh, by the time I was already a teenager, and by the time all that drug prevention and tobacco prevention was gone by high school. To be honest, I have no interest in vaping either. Whether or not that's safer to tobacco, people like to claim that, but I don't want any of that stuff in my body. Whether there's still nicotine in vape, so I don't feel like getting addicted to another, substance. They can they can put fruity flavors or Fruit Loops into cereal or whatever, ice cream and sugar. Great, it smells. I mean, it smells like candy, and you can tell somebody's been vaping because they got that really sugary smell in them. It doesn't even smell like candy, it's way above that, smell of candy and whatnot. Um, I don't want any of those chemicals in my body, you know. I'm trying to live a healthier lifestyle, so I don't want to smoke cigarettes. I don't want to vape. Get all that huge cloud of like, water particles in the air, and it's filled with nicotine, and I don't feel like inhaling that into my body. Whether that be cigarettes or vaping, I usually call them vape machines because huge clouds of vape, and I have no interest in that. E-cigarettes or the little electronic devices. I mean, I like electronics, but I don't like electronic cigarettes. So I have no interest in e-cigarettes. I've never vaped before. I didn't even hear about that until I was like 16 or something. That came out way after, I was like in elementary school. They started to market that. I remember seeing on TV when I actually still watch TV. Yeah, that the blue. I remember seeing that blue cigarette. It's like an electric. It looks like a cigarette, but it's black and there's like the LED lighting. It looks pretty cool, but it's still a cigarette. They can put some fancy marketing and vapes and whatnot, but it's still got nicotine in it, and I'm not gonna play around with that. Um, a lot of the packaging is really colorful too, but like I said, I stayed away from that, and I never popped pills or anything like that, or you know, did any of that. No, that's the thing is I actually never had a prescription for anything, to be honest. Uh, I guess I was lucky enough to not break any bones or have any serious injuries. I wasn't a sports person, so I didn't end up, you know, football and getting seriously injured or I didn't play any sports throughout high school or even today. I mean, I like to shoot hoops. It's fun to do basketball, but I never have been seriously injured or broken a bone or had to go to the hospital, emergency room. I've been to the doctor. I actually didn't go to the doctor. It was like I went to the doctor in kindergarten, and then I didn't go to the doctor until I was like first freshman year of college. So I guess I didn't really need it. I did need a head doctor though. That's what I need. But I've never had a prescription or abused opioids or popped pills or anything like that. None of the other drugs either. mushrooms or cocaine or heroin or meth or whatever fentanyl is. I mean, I never even heard about fentanyl until like a year and a half ago. I never grew up knowing about that. I knew about the other stuff from like movies, old movies and whatnot. Briefly talked about that, but I had no interest in any of those drugs either. Um, there was no people shooting up heroin in high school or sniffing cocaine or popping Molly or whatever they want to call it, ecstasy. I don't mind listening to music, with those references because it's music. They talk about that in rap music a lot, in electronic music. But as for marijuana, that was a big thing. I grew up and I heard about medical marijuana, and that was what was around when I was, in elementary school, and they didn't really talk about that too much, to be honest. They just talked about, I think they talked about marijuana in general, barely touched on it. But for me, I mean, I always thought that, it was medicine, right? And once I got into high school, last year of high school, they legalized it on a recreational level, and it wasn't until I was in about, I'd say, college that they finally, the regulations supposedly were in place. And so even though there are dispensaries in San Diego, um, the city anyways, I have no interest in using marijuana. Um, I'm not going to be fooled by the fancy, the Instagram pages, the Instagram videos and the the advertisements and the reader. We have a lot of free publications. I like to travel. I like to pick up newspapers and free stuff. It's free. I like to learn about my local community and the cities and events going on. And but I know the advertising interests are out there. I mean, you can pick up a newspaper now, and the first thing you see on it, at the bottom of the page, is here's a coupon for what you buy at a dispensary. Now that I'm 21, I mean, I what you need an ID, and you can go in and buy a bunch of candy and vapes and shatter and smoke buds and whatnot. I really have no interest in that. Um, I did see that happen in high school, and I did see the commercialization happen little by little. But I have absolutely no interest in smoking another substance. I don't want to do tobacco. I don't want to vape, nicotine, and I don't want to smoke, eat, dab, put, topical treatment, oils, or whatever the industry wants to sell me. I'm the prime consumer, right? Because I'm young. I probably believe a lot of that stuff, right? And so I realize that it's just another way to get me hooked on something. I've already been hooked on PMO, the NoFap. NoFap journeys taught me to be aware of my life, aware of the way I react to things, be more mindful. Meditation. It's really changed my entire life, by cutting out addictive behaviors. So I'm not gonna give in to another, you know, uh, what do they call it? Dog and pony show or something like that, or snake oil. I'm not gonna believe any of the hype, because it's just a hype machine, man. I'm not gonna believe that. So, luckily, I was taught that as a kid, and I think that's a blessing, that I learned something that I can take away from, right? People talk about how I just spent all this time in school. What the heck did I not learn about? I didn't learn about anything, What am I going to take away? And I did take away something from elementary and early middle school: to say no to drugs, to learn about the Red Ribbon Week, to learn about the history, and to learn about why we should stay away from those substances. And I can take that away, and it's a toolkit, And the more you learn about the other side of the argument, the more you realize what is behind that smoke screen. What is behind? Why are the cigarettes? Why are they pushing cigarettes? Why are they pushing alcohol? And if you see behind that smoke screen, the money interests, you realize that it's slick. It's they do a great job with advertising, right? It's slick advertising. it's like, oh man, I should, get some shots, or something like that. I've never, really explored too much with alcohol, but um, I realized that I should stay away from that, and I hope you guys learned something new. Take away something, the drug-free lifestyle, and stay away from alcohol, stay away from tobacco, and maybe it'll have a benefit for you. That NoFap was an amazing benefit for me, and I hope you guys have a great day, and that's how you live a drug-free lifestyle. Thank you very much, and peace.